So a major snag in the nuclear talks with Iran now. The deadline just a little more than a day away. Iran apparently reneging now on a key sticking point, going back on earlier promises to ship enriched atomic fuel outside of the country, in this case to Russia. The bait and switch perhaps putting those negotiations in jeopardy as diplomats try to hamper out a framework deal. Well, the White House is trying to put the best face on the backtracking, saying shipping out the uranium is still part of any possible agreement. Let's ask John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor. So, Ambassador, you've written an op-ed today in the New York Times, and here's the headline. It's an eye-catcher. To stop Iran's bomb Iran. What do you mean?
Well, the negotiations, whether they lead to an agreement or not, are not going to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. They're so far advanced now, the concessions they've made are so trivial and easily reversible that the deal actually legitimizes Iran's existing nuclear program. So my conclusion is not a happy one, but given that if Iran gets nuclear weapons, so will Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and maybe others, that just as Israel twice before has struck nuclear weapons programs in the hands of hostile states, I'm afraid, given the circumstances, that's the only real option open to us now.
Right now, or are you saying leading into the future?
No, I would have done this 5 or 6 years ago, because the earlier you strike, the more damage you can do.
So you actually argue in this op-ed that you believe that this negotiation with Iran has actually sparked an arms race, which is so interesting because President Obama would be the last one to be in favor of that.
Right. It's accelerated, I think, the arms race that was inevitable once Iran got the nuclear weapon. But the states like Saudi Arabia can see Obama is not going to do what's necessary to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. So they're going to look out for their own interest and develop their program. That's what they're doing right now.
Okay, what are we to make of these negotiations now? Because you have the foreign minister saying, oh, we're not going to really send our stockpile to Russia or anywhere else. Is it dead?
Well, this is a very significant development, and because it blows a hole in the central concept of what the Americans and Europeans have been trying to negotiate for close to a year and a half now, that Iran would never be in a position to get the nuclear weapons, at least without plenty of advance notice. And what's even more interesting, as you just said a moment ago, the State Department's response is, well, this doesn't constitute backtracking by the Iranians because we had never reached agreement on it before anyway, which would tend to indicate there's still a lot of air between the parties. Not to say they won't reach a deal. I think the Obama administration was prepared to give up almost anything to get a deal.
That's scary because they are also trying to push it off to the actual June deadline, saying that maybe that part of the deal would be in the June part of the deadline, not tomorrow's. So what do they actually have to come to terms on by tomorrow night to actually move forward?
Well, apparently not much of anything. And I wouldn't say tomorrow night's necessarily a deadline either. Another remarkable thing here, I would have thought this impossible until the British Foreign Secretary actually said it, that this deal in principle doesn't have to be written down. So they're going to have a verbal deal with the Ayatollah's negotiators over an extraordinarily complex issue and then punt the whole thing to June. But I think they need to declare victory. I think the White House needs that. So despite all this chaos, I think a deal is still likely by midnight tomorrow.
Wow. A verbal deal with Iran. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Ambassador, thank you.
Thank you.